right, we are live. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're live here at Ultra Products this evening. Should be an interesting conversation.
Wrong. I can hear it.
Come on, Doug.
I do it every time.
I did it too. So this evening we will be talking about preparing for success. This is episode 18. If you guys have been watching, we've covered a lot of different topics over the last 3.5 months. That's right. We've been at this 3.5 months.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man, time flies when you're having
We
fun.
were just over there in that other corner, starting out.
Yeah. I mean, that's
That's right.
true because it was ATA.
Yeah. So this evening, we are going to be going over a variety of topics that we feel like will help you in preparing for your season to kind of get you off on the right foot, to make sure that the things you're doing will set you up for success. And I feel like it's going to be a good one. We're going to keep it short tonight. We don't have Lathan with us. We miss Lathan.
We'll have a fawn.
In honor of Lathan, we've got a mic set up for him, but his voice will not be heard this evening. So,
Well, we'll survive, I guess.
should be a quiet evening.
Yeah. All those tangents and bunny trails.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Oh, Garrison Mathis is watching. Look at that. Boy, oh boy.
So, if you guys have any questions while we're discussing what we'll be talking about, throw those on there. Let us know what your thoughts are. And if you disagree with us, I don't care. That's right.
But you can tell us about it.
That's right. Go ahead and tell us
I'm
about
not
it.
going to change nothing.
And
Likely not. Oh, no, we're trainable. We're to be taught. Something to learn every day. Where do you want to go first, Wes?
so I would say let's start with what we've been doing. I would say your window for spring food plots is rapidly closing.
Yes.
I think you might have a couple more weeks left.
In certain areas, we're going to get some rain next week, so likely we could probably get away with a little bit more, but it's winding down fast and dry before you know it, and it'll be fall plantings from there on out.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
And it's been my experience that if you plant a food plot in the spring, the yield for it is so much better. I feel like what you see as far as tonnage in regards to your plants is far greater.
Yeah. I mean, I would have to agree. Now, there are some fall plantings that just would overrun and overtake the plot if you planted them in the spring. So they're best suited. Your brassicas and your turnips, things like that, are going to be fall plantings. But yeah, you're if you can get them early, and in fact, we frost seed a lot of our clover plots, and that is, in my experience, has been the most successful clover plots. Have been the ones that we frost seeded. It seems like they get that jump start, and just the moment that it's time, they're going.
It's, to me, clover is a roll of the dice. Like him calling that particular seed "lucky lady," it's fitting because you're lucky if it comes out.
You're right, and I've had some real disappointments with clover, and a lot of times it was probably some of my own doing, either my timing or the lack of preparation on the plot. But you're right, clover kind of wants just a certain thing to be right.
Here's what I found. You plant it in the fall, hoping that you're going to see a yield.
Yep.
And you do next spring.
That's right.
So you don't even see it in the fall, what you're saying.
A lot of times.
Sometimes what you get
I'm not
is
saying that you won't ever see it.
right.
Because you'll see, I don't know, maybe a quarter of it will come up.
Right. And you think,
then,
wow, that was a failure.
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
And then after spring,
About now.
you're like, oh my word, there's all that clover.
Yeah, it was there.
Yeah.
I always feel like my perennial planting that I do in the fall is always just preparation for the next year. If you get use out of it, that fall, great. But don't count on it being amazing.
Yeah.
Because it a lot of times is.
Let me ask you this: do you ever account for when planting in the spring of having to replant in the fall because it's been picked over so much? Or do you just leave it as it is because you know you'll get a better yield in the spring if you were to plant in fall?
No, not necessarily. And here's why. I think if you're seeing your food plot absolutely destroyed, it's going to tell you two things. It's going to tell you either my numbers are so high that I need a larger food plot,
Right.
or it's going to tell you that my ground is so poor that it won't grow what I want.
Right.
You know?
The deer can kill it off.
Right.
Yeah.
But here's something that we do sometimes, though, and I know I've done this, and I know Wes has too. Is so say just call it clover because that's where it seems to be the popular topic the last few minutes. So you get clover in, whether you frost seeded it or just planted it on a spring planting like you typically would, whatever. So it grows through the summer and it gets hit pretty hard, or it doesn't, or whatever. I still sometimes like to sow in some wheat or oats or something in the fall just to give it a longevity through the colder deer season. Not always in the same plot, but sometimes right in and amongst that clover. Everybody has a different feeling about what they want to do there, but sometimes I will do that, not so much because I feel like it's substandard and the deer have done something to it. I just want to prolong what use I get out of that plot.
That's interesting. I try and make sure I mow it because every time you mow clover, you're essentially reseeding your plot.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if you wait to the right time.
Yes.
Right.
Like you can, if you mow it too early, that's a problem. If you mow it too late, it's kind of a problem.
Right.
So you gotta look for the right time.
Mm-hmm.
They say when it's 8 to 10 inches tall is about when you want to do it.
Yeah.
If you mow it at that point, it also will branch off to create different,
Right.
I think, and I used to think this as well, but I think people a lot of times feel like, oh man, I don't want to mow that. Look, I'm going to hurt it.
Yeah.
Look how good it's looking. I don't want to mow it. Clover likes to be mowed at the right time,
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like there's times where, you can worry too much and you just need to do some maintenance on the thing.
Yeah. Make sure you talk into it because I'm losing you a little bit. So.
All right. Yep.
So why do you think there's a big push to plant fall plots then if the spring is so vibrant?
Well, I think fall are good if you're planting the right things.
Okay.
Like, so for instance, this Wicked Greens over here. And a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of things you can plant for relatively cheap.
Right.
And things that will keep deer in your area. And ultimately, that's what we're all trying to do. We want to keep deer from leaving our property to go somewhere else to feed. But I think the reason fall plots still have their place is because it provides them with not only a variety, you don't go and eat the exact same thing every day.
Right, yeah.
You might, I don't know.
Well, he doesn't. That's a fact.
At the end of the day, if you did that, you'd be like, man, I'm sick of this bologna sandwich.
Right.
And I think deer, they're drastically less than what we are, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think variety is good for a deer. Like you will see them come out to certain things that they enjoy at one time, and then as the season progresses, they'll come to another thing that, it changes. So I think variety is good. If you plant all of one thing, I think you might see deer leave your property.
Yeah, I tend to look at the spring planting and the fall planting with different purposes. Like I really feel like stuff that I want to grow through the summer has a sort of a sustaining property, and I use it to observe the deer. So we live in an area of the world, there's lots of food. There's crop fields everywhere. They're in soybeans all summer and all that. There's lots of food, but I like to monitor deer over food in the off season. Obviously, give them the nutrition they need, but they're getting a lot of good food out there just through agricultural means.
Yeah.
But my fall plantings, I leave them with a totally different purpose. Now, those are going to be set up in places where we want to hunt the deer. some of my summer stuff might be in places I don't really even hunt over that much. I might,
But you want to monitor.
but I keep track of them.
Yeah.
Cameras will be on it. I'll get some growth pictures through the summer and all that. But the fall plantings are going to be different in that obviously you're going to plant different things in the fall anyway, because you're not going to, you need things that grow quick and have a real quick attractiveness to the deer. Those are the deer you're going to hunt, the areas you might hunt right over. So I just look at them with different purposes. And so yes, the fall planting is important because it's going to be different things, maybe in different locations with a little bit different purpose.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why this is a viable conversation is because we have so many people that come in here and the question is, what do I plant? They have no idea.
Right.
And that can change depending upon what your soil is. That can change, depending upon when you're wanting deer to be hitting it. I mean, turnips and sugar beets, like a lot of times they're not going to hit those early.
No.
Right.
Like that's a waste of your time. You may have them planted and you're thinking, man, that looks phenomenal.
And they do look great.
And nothing ever comes to it.
Right.
Because with those, once you get a frost on them, it begins to sweeten them up. And that at that point, they become more attractive to them.
Yeah. And their other food sources at that time are changing. So, because that's a fall planting, crops are maturing and being harvested and going away. The agricultural crops, they're going away. The natural grasses are drying up, turning brown. The mast crop is getting consumed. Then you look at this beautiful Jurassic Park looking food plot now with all this stuff, and it lends itself to the deer to want to use it.
Yeah,
then
it for sure does. And I think even not even just in food plot, but you can also see deer switching their feeding patterns even amongst the crops.
Oh yeah.
They're going to go from beans at one point to they're going to switch over to corn.
Yeah.
So, because of that, like I told Doug the other day, I feel like on my property, I probably went too heavy on clover. Like I feel like I need a little bit more variety, which I've got some places I'm going to plant.
It's getting pretty good now. You're getting it pretty good.
Pretty strong on the clover.
Well, your place is looking better now than it ever has.
Yeah.
I mean, by far. You have some cover grasses now. You've got a variety of food now, and the clover is looking pretty fantastic.
How well do those cover grasses work for you? You see like night and day difference.
Oh yeah,
really?
It's
absolutely
pretty amazing.
Like if you don't have a bedding, you need some sort of grasses.
Really?
Oh, dude, it's like overnight
And
they start using it.
what
Like
I-
as soon as it gets to height where you're like they feel comfortable in it.
Which is not as tall as you would think.
No, it's not.
You have this thought, I need something 8 feet tall, thick. Once the deer can lay down and all that you see is its ears sticking up, that's enough for them to want to lay in it. And they feel at that point that they have security. And so even though I'm not opposed to growing, some of these plots with big tall grasses, because it does make good cover, but you don't have to have stuff that tall.
Yeah, you really don't.
They will take a liking to it and they'll bed out in that stuff and spend more time crossing it slowly instead of scooting across a wide open area.
Well, it's amazing how many times you drive past a fescue like grassway,
Right.
and they're laying down, and you can tell they feel like they're covered.
They're going to stay put. Yeah.
And all it is fescue.
Yeah. And I mean, they're not even really hidden, but they feel somehow like they're okay.
Yeah.
So, the question is, how do you go out strategizing planting that? Do you plant it around your food plots? Do you plant it just a section off your food plot? I mean, how do you go about planting that?
So, like last year, for instance, I planted, and my father-in-law helped me with this, but we planted sunflowers in a strip.
Okay.
And we planted sunflowers and we planted sweet corn. The sweet corn I intended for consumption, but
it got consumed.
it got consumed by a deer. So, planted 3/4 of an acre,
Which
of
is a
sweet
lot.
corn.
That's a lot.
And I never, when I say I didn't get an ear, I never got anything taller than 4 inches.
No kidding.
They ate everything.
At that
Everything.
point, they were telling you a story.
They were telling me I didn't plant enough.
That's right. There's not enough for it.
right.
But that is a lot, though. I mean, most people do not plant that much sweet corn.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine if you planted less? I mean, there would be no chance in the world you'd ever see any. You know,
I was saying all that to say this. I left the sunflower standing as a barrier to walk in.
Right.
And it worked great. We've got a particular seed here in the shop that's called the wall, and that's entirely what it's for, is building areas where you can use for walk-ins, you can use for areas where, you know, let's say you hunt close to a road and you don't want people seeing the deer all the time or harassing the deer. It works great for that. So,
you know, your entry and exit of your stand, the more covered you can be doing that, the better off you are. And it's not, people think, you know, when the sun sets and the hunt's over for that day, well, I'll just get out of here. That's just as important to be sneaky getting out of there
Yes.
and not being seen, heard, or smelled getting out of there. You know, having some cover like that is really important. You know, there's a lot of places that I don't, you know,
not being smelled, that's kind of tricky for you sometimes.
Well, it is. But if you take 3 or 4 of those Ozonic units and just tape them to you everywhere, you'd be surprised. The batteries get heavy, but it's worth it. I feel like it's worth it. But now, so something too, and it's worth mentioning. So so many times we plant plots and we're like, oh, that didn't go well. That doesn't look good. You know, that's not, lots of disappointments with fruit plots.
Yeah, there are.
A lot of it is self-inflicted, but just the same, there's such a mixed result. And I will say this, for about a year now, we've been using this Rack Fuel food plot seed. And as far as I've seen and reports that we get, guys that are buying it here and using it, I've never seen a better seed. This stuff grows so well, and it seems to be, it's just, I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff we just planted here earlier, you know, a few weeks back, it's looking really good.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that being said, we are not like in any way sponsored. We're not like, I will tell you this, in our shop, I would prefer to sell something that works over something that doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
And I can tell you that there's not a seed that I've personally used that I'm like, absolutely, that works as well as this one.
Right.
Last year I planted Lady Luck. I planted Wicked Greens, and there's another clover blend that on the season.
Right.
Yeah.
The on the season, I'll tell you straight up, it did not come up as well as Lady Luck, and I planted them side by side.
What do you attribute that to?
It had to have been something pertaining to the germination rate. It had to have been, because it didn't come up as well in the fall. In the fall, I had a good stand of the Lady Luck, and I did not on the season. Planted them the same day.
Do you think, is it a different type of clover in the mix?
It is.
So is it possible that a pH issue was affecting one more than the other? One liked a little bit different soil? Do you feel like?
Well, here's what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
On come springtime, it was unreal how good it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it just didn't come up.
I see what you're saying. So it was just a delayed.
So a timing thing is probably what it was.
Yeah, so it's set in the soil, and it's set until spring, and then this year it's super thick.
So at this point, you were a little bit disappointed with it before. It has caught back up.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, well then,
Yeah.
that's a win.
Yeah.
But it's good to know.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of gives you, you know.
It lets you know some things for sure. Like whenever I planted it, it was maybe pushing the envelope a little bit. I think it was in late August.
Right.
And I think if I would have gotten it in early August, I think I would have been fine.
Well, one problem we had, though, in our area, you know, regionally, we had a very dry summer, particularly the latter part of the summer.
Yeah.
And it was rough. There was things I was hoping to plant that I just never even planted because it was just so dry. I just felt like we couldn't successfully do it.
Yeah.
And so that possibly could have an effect on some of that stuff too. But at least now, though, you're seeing that that planting is growing good.
Yeah, it
And
is.
so I mean, that's a win.
Yeah. So, in regards to food plots, are there any questions that you think other people might ask that they don't know?
Other than planting them, just make sure when you plant them, you're always thinking of like entry and exit, not just planting a food plot just because.
Yeah.
I think a lot of guys overlook that. I think they see that like the mainstream media is like, just plant a food plot and you don't have a
magic.
The greener will show up, you know. And it's like, there's a little bit more to it than just going out there and throwing some seed in the ground.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, the biggest mistakes I've made with food plots are probably similar to what other people do. You get in a hurry and you don't want to take the time to do soil samples. You don't want to fertilize. You don't put lime. You don't work the soil quite as good. Maybe you don't kill off the weeds before you do it just quite as good. And you just rush in there and let's just do this thing. Let's do it. And those mistakes can lend themselves to poor results.
They almost always do.
Yes. So I would say, just based on me making the same mistake over and over the years, don't get in such a hurry that you don't do it right. Plan ahead far enough that you leave yourself enough time to kill off the weeds, to prep the soil.
Yeah.
Do the soil samples. And I'm preaching this, and these last few food plots I put in, I did no soil samples. You know, and so, but if you want them right, do the soil samples. Know what the soil is lacking. You know, prep the soil properly. You know, get it worked good. Those things are going to help.
Yeah. Well, one nice thing about this rack fuel is on the side of it, they tell you where your pH needs to be on all your seeds.
No, that is awesome.
That's awesome, yeah.
So,
but you have to check it.
It does nothing if you do not check.
That is correct. So bear that in mind. But yeah, it's the food plot thing's fun though. Don't you think it's fun?
I'm a farmer at heart.
Yeah.
Even though I don't farm anything, but I like disking up ground.
It's just fun.
It is.
And then you come and check. Like, you know, we were on Leroy's place yesterday in the morning, and I was thinking the whole time we were there, man, we should go over and check that plot. We were just there a few days earlier and looked at it. Nothing's really changed. You know what I mean? And I think we should go over there and look at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it means anything, you know. But it's hard to even be in the area and not go and walk out there and look. Oh, looky here. Oh, it's growing. Oh, look at there. You know, it's just something about it that's just kind of fun.
When did we plant those food plots?
Goodness, I was trying to think of it. So it had to be. It was the last week of March. I planted the ones on Leroy's.
So I planted mine the same day.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. So there we go. And then the only reason I know that is it was just before
There was a rain coming.
Yes.
I remember.
Well, I remember the youth turkey season was just days away because one of the spots we were making a pot, somebody was going to be hunting, and I was like, they're going to be here. I don't want to run all these. You know, I was worried about messing them up. So I know it was right around that time. So it's like last week of March. And yes, we were getting some periodic rains and whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that we nailed that pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Mine's coming up really well.
It looks good. Like I really, I'm pretty excited about how it'll go. And, you know,
The reason why I was asking was I guarantee you I've went and looked at that food plot 20 times.
Oh man.
Yeah.
This is like you just stroll out there like, I think I'll go check on that. And you go out there like as if anything is gonna be there's nothing you're gonna do.
I think it's grown a millimeter.
Yeah. I mean there's times where you know how when the clover first pops open, it just kind of does that.
Yeah.
And it leaves literally like 3 grains of sand.
But
Right?
man, you're so proud.
And then after a while that one pops up out of it.
It's like it's a child.
Look at it. I'm so proud. 5 fingers on each hand. And so, so it's neat. You go out there, and then before you know it, like it actually looks like clover. It doesn't just look like something that emerged from the ground. It actually looks like clover.
That's right.
Like, all right, well, here we go.
All right. So another thing I want to make sure that we cover, because we're already 25 minutes in, and I've told you guys that we'll do it short tonight. So, stand placement. Are you guys thinking about that right now?
Always.
You're always thinking about it.
Like it's one of those things for me, and I almost in a way don't like it where it's hard to turn that off. You know, before you go to bed at night, you're laying there thinking, man, I wonder if I should move that stand. I wonder if, we got to get over to this farm. Look at this. I wonder if those deer are doing this. I mean, last year I saw that, and always things go into your head. And then the actual just general maintenance, like, that stand has that weird little creak pop noise it makes. I need to get over there and either fix that thing or take it out.
Yeah.
And so, for me right now, this is what how you plan things and then they go whatever way they go. So my plan always is, as deer season is ending, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. And Leroy just the last few weeks has been saying this too. He's like, hey, before it's 110 degrees out, why don't we do all this tree stand moving and all this stuff while it's still cool out? And all that, which is a great idea.
There's a switch that kicks over in guys' heads.
Yep.
And it's sometime around the hottest day of the year that they're like, man, deer season's getting close.
Long now.
So get excited and everything shifts over.
So what was it, 80 what degrees today?
I think it's like around 81 or 82 degrees.
Okay, so great. So here we are. We missed the real cool weather. and so the stands that we purchased for this year's maintenance and all that stuff months ago, I don't know how long ago, it was cold out, like cold out, winter. And so they're sitting there in boxes, pretty stacked up. Now, like I said, we always say, okay, let's get this all done. And we don't. So this weekend,
there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Oh, it's a lot. People don't realize you stroll in and you climb on that stand and sit down and you don't realize what had to be done to get your rear end in that seat for that hunt. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
It's a ton of work.
The guys who hang them know.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Oh, they do.
Especially if you're by yourself.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just a whole degree of difficulty that that is not enjoyable. But,
we've owned this shop for a little over a year now. And I can tell you with certainty that there is a whole business in hanging stands for people.
Mm-hmm.
oh, man. I think if you could work that out, like the thing is, like, I am also, well, here's another thing. So, and everybody may look at this way different. I can't stand to let somebody else hang a stand for me because I want to do it. And I mean,
I'm the same way.
Like, I just can't.
Even my own dad, it's like, I got to do it myself.
But I can tell you that there's a lot of guys that come in September 30th and they're like, hey, I need my bow worked on. And that's the guys that I'm talking about.
Oh,
They're like, man, you mean somebody would come and hang my stand for me?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And after a while too, and you know this, you get a knack for how they need to be set.
Yeah.
In a given situation, and how they need to be laid out. And there's something about that where you just kind of get, after you've done it not dozens, hundreds of times, you just kind of you get to where like, this will work.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this. This will work. Setting this way, doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's just something really good about it, but it is a lot of work. It's a lot of, because you're not just hanging a stand. You're bringing chainsaws and limb saws and you're cutting things and of course.
Well, and you took an hour to put the stand together.
To put it together. This thing comes in a box. It doesn't come ready to put up in the tree. And so that was one thing that I was going to be doing right now was putting stands together.
Seems like a good evening for it.
I know. And so for the weekend, to be able to start getting those things out, because there's several things we need to get that we can't reach once the crops are up and planted in and everything. So
let me ask you this. A lot of guys don't realize what you do. Doug owns an outfitting business here in Southern Illinois. A lot of guys automatically, they'd get ruffled up about that. But hey, guys want to come here and hunt, and you create that opportunity for them.
And they're coming.
But that being said, that's right. They're coming regardless of what you do. Yeah. But that being said, my question for you is this. You look at a lot of places and hang a lot of stands. What do you look for when you're going to hang a stand?
Okay, so very first thing, because someone that's not me is going to be in that tree, like how I might be in the woods, I can't always count on everybody's going to be that way. Okay, so I don't
everybody's a Lathan.
Right. So I'm saying, so first thing I want to be sure of is that because we will use these stands periodically throughout the season, there needs to be enough cover to hide that stand and that person as much as possible.
Yeah.
Now that's not, there's just certain patches of woods, there just isn't a lot of cover, and you've got to do the best you can. But how you turn that stand and how you place it as the approach of deer, so you're not silhouetted, things like that, that we can get away with as much use of that thing as possible before the deer are onto it and, you know, coming out way off in the distance, staring up there, waiting to see if there's somebody in that tree.
Yeah.
And so safe entry and exit of the stand. Like, I really want to set my stand so that if my dad or whoever
That's a good way to put that.
climbs in that stand, he can do it and not struggle. Like, you know, and so I really want to have a setup that's conducive to climbing in without having to do something strenuous or dangerous, and make it that it is a repeatable setup. Like, we can use it and have it in a way. And there's just certain times things just go wrong, and the deer bust you, and they know, and you know, they come back tomorrow and they're looking, and they know, you know. I mean, and so there's times that's going to happen. But I really like, when I walk in, what I usually do is I'll go in and I'll get on the path that the deer is going to take, that I envision that the deer is going to take.
Yeah.
And I get on that path and I start walking through, and I look for the area it would be most difficult to pick out an object in that tree as I'm walking through. So I'm looking up, there's a cluster of trees, not just one tree. There's a cluster of trees there that if there was a person or an object in that tree, I wouldn't be able to silhouette that easily in that spot. And so that's the thing I do first. I walk through and look, okay, that would hide a guy. Now then I have to consider the general most common wind direction that will be, you know, we get a lot of west, southwest, northwest. So thinking, so if that's on the wrong side of that deer sign, that still might not be a good option. Now, I could just hang it there and say, look, we need an east wind to hunt this. Okay. You know, and we get some of that. We don't get a ton of it, but we get some of it. A lot of times it's warm, thunderstormy, prior to bad weather kind of east winds. Not always ideal, but I might do that. And then I just work through that process and try to find something that I can hunt in the most common winds that we have with the most cover. And I look too, here's the thing, if the sun is in the hunter's eyes and behind the deer, that's a bad situation.
Yeah.
So what I really want to do is, look, we had an eclipse not long ago. Look up there. You can't see much when you're staring into the sun. You're not going to see that guy. So if you can set your setup so that you've got the sun behind the hunter primarily during that sit, so the deer comes through, they're going to have a really hard time picking out any particular thing. Even if they see a little movement, that's really hard. I'm looking into the sun here. I can't really see that.
Speaking of that, I remember the first time I hunted one of your stands.
Yeah.
It was there at Revis's.
Yeah.
And I remember staring into the sun.
Getting baked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
the next time I went there, that stand was no longer there.
Well, there was a stand that was around would be the west side of that point of woods.
Yeah.
In the afternoon. If it was a cloudy day, it was fine. If it was a sunny afternoon, I would almost just have to warn people. Now you're about to go do something you're going to really dislike, because you're going to have to do something. It was brutal, and that was rough. But, you know, again, it was kind of
sometimes you've got to pick places like that because you know
it's where they are.
That's where they are.
You know, and it worked. You know how many times we got shot that spot? And it was like, I didn't even like it. Like, I would go there. It was really, there weren't too many options there for tree. You know, there's ones. I remember one time you shimmied up a tree with your climber one time when it was freezing cold, when you had about 100-pound backpack, and you went up in that tree. And I believe it was a sassafras tree that was not built for a guy to be in a climber, because we hated that stand so much.
Yeah.
And the deer would come across, and they knew it. They didn't like it. So our idea was, Wes was like, well, I'll just go. I'll take my camera, because Lathan couldn't be with you that afternoon. I'm not sure what he was doing. It was late season. And you climbed up in that thing, and we almost had it got so cold it was hard to get down out of the trees. Like, it was numbing cold. And
those are interesting hunts.
Yeah, they are.
Whenever you get down and you're like, how am I going to put this stand back together?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Well, I can just tell you, there have been times where I've looked at that stand and said, I'm going to have to come back tomorrow and get this. I have to get out of here right now. There have been many of them, but you should look and say, this is just too much.
Yeah.
But
I've watched Lathan swing his arms as hard as he can for like 5 minutes
To get
just
the blood.
trying to get blood back in him. Yeah. Well, like, is this really the best decision that we could make?
One of the first times I actually hunted with Lathan, it was like negative 10 degrees outside, and it was windy. And we were bow hunting,
Yeah.
and I had an arrow knocked, and I went to unknock it and put it in my quiver, and I couldn't feel my fingers, and I dropped it right in front of me. It was the most embarrassing thing ever. Not only that, he came to my tree to get me, and about hit him falling out. I was like, dude, sorry, I can't feel my fingers.
I guarantee you didn't scare him. Man.
No, it comes out next week.
Yeah. Well, but those are honestly, those are the cool things.
They
Like
are.
you think back about, we built that little surround for your climber that time out of some fabric. I don't know what we did. It was like a white fabric. It was super cold in the late season,
Yeah.
and we built it. And I don't even think it worked that good. But like you're trying to devise a way. How can I get up there and
Man,
block?
we've done all sorts of stuff over the years trying to get close.
Yeah.
And man, I think that's the things that a lot of guys that just go to a stand and that's what
Yes.
they know, there's an element that they miss out on.
Oh, for sure.
I remember going and setting in those weeds over there on that
Yep.
one spot. And it's
Yep.
just like,
Yep.
I was trying to make sure that, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not dark, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, so here's the thing. Most of the time, those creative things don't turn out to be the marvelous success stories that we hope they'll be.
Yeah, but when they do.
But when they do,
Yeah.
here's the thing, and this separates some guys from other guys, is that when you keep trying everything that you can do to make that work, eventually success happens.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you wouldn't have had that success if you just kept going and sitting in that tree over there that you always sit in, looking across our field. There they are again. There's nothing over there. Well, what can I do? Well, how can I do it? And it's really hard. There's a situation this past season. One of the farms, I had a guy, and I got there just a little bit early in the afternoon just to glass things because he was reporting in through the day. He sat all day back there in a river bottom, and he's like, man, I'm not seeing much, like at all.
Yeah.
And so it was actually Garrison's dad, and so I was like, all right, so I'm going to go a little early. I'm going to glass. There's a ton of deer there, and we're getting pictures of good bucks. And I was like, man, we got to. So I pull in, and so here are the bucks chasing does all around in this field. And I'm thinking, okay, wait. He just said he didn't see these deer, but there they are. And I realized they're doing something totally different, at least at that moment, than we had seen them do. So that night we made a new plan, and we set somebody out at the most unlikely. I'm just telling you, most people would have been like, don't do this to me. Like, I just took one of the guys, and he had seen virtually nothing on that trip. It had just not been good. It just wasn't going good for him. I said, look, just walk down this ditch line. There wasn't a tree. When I say there's not a tree, there were bushes at best this tall. That's it. I said, find something that you can sit beside that'll break up your outline a little, a clump of grass or something. Just sit on the ground. And I know this seems weird, but yesterday there was bucks all over this. Sure enough, they showed up, and he killed a really nice buck.
And he was in the middle of them.
Yep, right there. Now,
That's the story that he'll tell his whole life.
yeah, and
Like, to me, that's the thing. I'd rather be the other guy. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to be the guy that's like, I'm not content to just sit in a tree somewhere.
Even if it
I want to be
fails.
the other guy.
That's right. Even if it fails, even if you don't achieve what you were looking for, you are giving it everything you've got to make that happen, and that's kind of cool. It kind of makes it fun too. It takes, it can get monotonous about partway through the season, halfway, get toward late season. Things get a little stale. Like, okay, get up again.
Now, that's the
Again.
thing. You've got to continually be pushing yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Because if you're not, you end up just, becoming like the statistic,
Well,
like everybody else. You go,
That's right.
you sit in the same tree. You wait until you got the perfect wind,
Yeah.
northwest, or You just go.
And here's the other thing. Eventually, when it goes just a little further past that, you start talking yourself out of going altogether.
Yeah.
Because, what's the point? I've been doing this for 2 months. Wait, is the wind? Oh, it's windy out there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's cold. Do I even want to do this? You start talking yourself out of it. And
I know guys who are saying that after 2 days.
I've met a few of those.
I've been at this for forever.
Hours.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. No.
All right, so let's move on in an effort to keep things moving. One thing that I would like to talk about is trail cameras, trail camera placement. And I know we've had an entire episode that we talked about trail cameras, but we didn't talk about utilization and how you guys go about that. Where do you like to put them? Where do you find the best yield? And does that change as season changes? Like, tell me those things.
So, you want to take this one, or you?
I was just going to say, trail cameras for me in the summer, I can't use them. For the simple fact is where I hunt is all bottoms ground. And where there's not an ag field, it's filter strips all the way around, and there's grass head high. So therefore, I'd be sticking my camera right in the grass.
Yeah.
So I have no woods. I have nothing. I hunt fence rows, ditches, and open fields. That's my game. And so therefore, I'm a trail camera game. I'm out until the farmer mows in August.
Your deer might not even be there now anyway.
Right, exactly.
And so, yeah, I get that. I would say, try to do this as a brief rundown. So to me, right now, where we're at right now, early May, this is the absolute earliest that I could call inventorying deer, because they're growing, just getting started. So there's, as far as inventorying deer with cameras and selecting certain deer, that's not quite here yet.
A month from now.
A month from now, things really change. But this is what I like to do. I've got some of my cameras out now, not all. I would say a quarter to a third of my cameras are out and running. In places that, for differing reasons, I like to keep them all year. I don't take them down. And even my cell cams, some of those are out right now. And not that I need to know what happens this minute as it happens, but I still run them. Partly because I enjoy it, but I still run them. So what I do now is that all food sources are in transition throughout the year, but really right now.
Yeah.
We're going from weeds in fields that haven't even been tilled or killed yet. We've got fields that are disked. We got fields that have been planted and the stuff's an inch tall, and everything in between. We've got wheat fields that'll be harvested in a few weeks or a month that are tall. And so what I try to do now is start putting my cameras out. I'm going to just call it over the next month. This is what the next month looks like for me. Some of my cameras are out now, but over the next month, the very first thing that I want to do is soybeans that are a few inches tall, very palatable for deer.
Yeah,
they're going to be there. So I'll start picking field edges on bean fields first. That's the first thing that I'll do. Food plots, yes, but if I'm looking at just the big picture, so I'm going to start picking, and not just any bean field, but ones that I've done some glassing and some research to know that this is where I need to put these, and start learning what's going on. Sometimes just general deer information, but here shortly I'll be able to start picking out, oh, that's that deer. He's got that.
It won't be long.
It won't be long.
Able to know.
Now, what'll happen though is, and this is where it gets interesting, this requires a lot of work, by the way, and a lot of scouting. But so you'll find corn gets planted. At first, yes, deer are in corn, but they really love those soybeans. Now, all of a sudden, when corn gets about 4 feet tall, 5 feet tall, I'll switch a lot of my cameras to, we call them corn lanes. The edges of cornfields, deer will choose to walk that edge because it's easy and it's perfect cover. It's usually an open path. So I'll switch a lot of my cameras to the edges of cornfields, not necessarily because I think that they're choosing that corn as their primary food right then, but because they're using it as travel. A deer that you killed last year with your bow was using the edge of a cornfield.
Yeah.
And it's pretty predictable they're going to use that edge.
Yeah.
And you've got several pictures of him and planned, and there he was. He came in and you killed him. But even through the summer, as that corn's growing, now it creates a wall that they can walk beside, and they love edges. Deer love edges. So I'll switch a lot of them to that. As the season progresses, then that turns into scrapes. After we start putting, scrapes a little earlier than most people think, mid to late August, deer visit scrapes. They're not working necessarily with antlers, but they'll visit scrapes. And by September, they're
So
doing
mid to late August, you start scraping.
looking for scrapes and making mock scrape locations.
Okay.
And by September, that's in full tilt.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I'm going to say 95% of my cameras will be on scrapes the rest of the year.
Yeah.
That's where they
Your
stay.
inventory really changes
Yes.
when you switch over from food to scrape.
Yes. At that point,
Yeah.
one, you're primarily getting pictures of your bucks and some does, but primarily all bucks. You're inventorying bucks at that point. You're not just getting pictures of deer on the edge of a food source.
Yeah.
And a lot of those scrapes might well be on the edge of that great food source.
Right. Yeah.
But they might be other places as well. And then I'll start moving cameras into some of the heavier wooded areas where there are scrapes along some of the river bottoms, things like that, as we progress. But that's a progression over the course of the entire summer and early
So
fall.
let me ask you this. If that's the case, would you encourage the average guy who's looking to save a little bit of money to primarily start August 1st?
You certainly could do that. I don't do that because I'm really, really concerned about the general inventory throughout the summer. But I would say this.
But the largest majority of your inventory comes after August 1st, correct?
It will, in terms of the deer that relocate to their fall rut areas. And that's going to happen in October primarily, but you're getting ready for that in the latter part of September.
Yeah.
So if the deer that are going to be local deer for the fall, which aren't always the same deer that are your local deer for the summer,
Yeah.
yes, you could start that process in September and probably be okay. What you're not going to have then, and this can be critical, is you're not going to have the information on that random 200-inch deer that only passed through 2 or 3 times in the summer that is somewhere around. You may not even know he exists. Now, you may never see that deer again. That might have been the only thing he did. Remember that big 6-point.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot.
I remember.
I know.
I remember. And,
Yeah, I didn't mean to bring up.
he haunts me at night.
I understand. So that deer, I learned most of what I knew about that deer midsummer. And he would do this disappearing act. And this is strange. He consistently did it right up till the end.
Yeah.
He would do this disappearing act where we wouldn't see him through the prime, what we would, most people would normally consider the good bow hunting, the late October, early to mid-November. But then he would, he'd be there in the summer. He would vanish. And when I say vanish, I mean, a lot of cameras, they take pictures 24/7. He wasn't there at night either. He was just did something, whatever he did. And then sure enough, he'd show back up. And mid to late deer season, he'd show back up. And as if he was never gone, and he'd be there daily. As you remember, we would bump that deer, something would go wrong or whatever, and he'd be back. And, and so.
Man, that deer.
Yeah.
What a jerk.
Yeah. Deer are jerks.
Yeah.
That is one of the rules you have to know. It's just a thing. But a lot of what I learned about that, in fact, I might not have known that deer even existed if I only put cameras out starting in, say, September. I might have missed him completely and then randomly said, oh, look at that big buck there in December. Oh, look at that big buck. I wonder what that is. Wow, there it goes. There you go. And not really realize what I was dealing with. But, we had a lot of history with that deer.
Man, we did.
And I mean, for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And so he, for a deer, I say a lot of years, several years, and so, I mean, there's something to be said for that. Now, if you're really trying to trim it back and not spend a lot more time and or money, because it's all money. You start throwing batteries in cameras and cellular plans on cameras, and okay, it's money. Like, there's no getting around it. So if you want to trim that, you certainly can. I'm just unwilling to miss the information that I'll get in the summer. I can't quite live with that, so I just got to know.
That's the thing. It's all spending money.
It is.
I mean, if you want to, you can go out, you can cut down a sapling, you can go get a string, and you can shoot a deer.
Yep. Right. Or
you can go out and you can spend, bukus of money on something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying either one's wrong.
Yeah. That's right. No, there are minimalist
personal preference. That's that, like if Layton was here, he'd be like, I don't want to know nothing until November.
That's right. Right. Yeah. He is a minimalist with a lot of things, but he's also very good at a lot of these things too. Like, that guy can take a bow apart, fix things. Look at, like, we'll have trouble with like the foam trailer. He'll wander over there, reach his arm around the thing, fish around with his eyes closed. Oh, look at that! That sensor's no good. Like, he's like,
it's the truest thing.
I mean, he is. Is he not? And so, like, the guy is amazing. But with a lot of things, like, we'll go to Colorado, and he's like, I don't want to take no maps. We don't need that phone. I don't want to do this. And he just wants to go. And to him, I think that's part of the thing. Is like, let's just go. Let's rough this. Let's just go and do this. I've got a good sense of direction. Let's go do this. And I have a tendency to be like, okay, let me get Onyx out. Okay.
I can say this though, and he probably wouldn't be thrilled that I said it, but I can tell you after last year, he was like, it's probably a good thing you had your phone. Well,
when he killed that bull, and the route he took to get back out, I looked at my phone and I said, Nathan, there's a road just the other way, just a little bit. Now, you can't know that without the map.
Yeah.
And he worked hard. I mean, that boy, how long did it take him to get from that kill site to get back to the road where you saw him coming out? I mean,
it was like 7 hours. Yeah.
Wow. Like, loaded with elk parts.
Yeah.
And so, and now, not to say that the other way was easy, because
all that being said, you want to be loaded with elk parts.
You want to be loaded with elk parts. One way or the other, you do want to be loaded with elk parts. But yeah, but there's, but again, I don't know how we got off on that, but there's a lot of ways to do things.
Yeah.
And you can choose to skip a whole lot of that and not do it at all.
For me, my favorite part's hitting this when I get serious about trail cameras is the mock scrapes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It is fun.
Yeah. I enjoy setting them up. I enjoy doing all the creativity with it, whether it's cutting a branch and hanging it and tying it up. Then it
is fun.
It's awesome.
Do you pee in it?
Oh, I do. Yes. I have the best luck on it when I pee in it myself.
The magic pee.
Do you pee in it?
I have him do it. I think his estrogen levels are higher. So I just have him do it. So I really think,
that's serving me 20s under the
here's the thing. That conversation happens all the time in the shop.
Yes.
Do you pee in it? I don't know. Here's my thing. I pee in every single one.
Here's my experience. I bought some of the stuff that we hear at Lip Curl. I'm not saying anything bad about it. It works.
Yeah.
But in the same field, I put that and I used my own urine, and within 20 minutes, I had a deer sitting there rubbing on it while I was in the field.
So isn't this crazy? I agree with you. Like,
it was nuts.
It is.
And that one got used 10 times more than the rest of it.
So get this. This is the strangest thing. This has always been something that almost annoys me. Deer are so good at using their nose as a tool. They can tell that doe is or is not ready.
Yeah.
They can tell by smelling on the ground, was that a buck or a doe that walked through here an hour ago? They can smell that guy up in that tree 200 yards away because the wind's blowing at him. All this stuff he can do. But yet, tell me this. How can I just go in the woods and go walk up to that scrape, which I have done many times, pee in that scrape, and that deer comes through and works it like it's a real thing? How does that even happen?
Because here's my thing. I don't think it has anything to do with your pee. That's my opinion.
What do you think it is?
It's not his. That's it.
That could be.
I think
I mean, I even go to the extreme as this. Like, if I'm hunting a stand that's got marginal wind, but I know that he was there, I'll pee in the direction that wind would be. And you know what? It works. It works. It does.
I pee in his direction.
I mean, it sounds as funny as it sounds.
Oh man, this is funny.
So how does that make you feel?
No, but really, I honestly think that it's all about him wanting to clean it out
Yeah.
and make it his. Like
Yeah.
it's a territorial thing,
That's
and
possible.
because of that, he's saying, you know what? I don't know who did that, but I don't like get out
So
of my area.
why do you? Okay, so let me say, if you had like a fresh thing of buck pee, like why do you think they would hit the human pee more than the buck pee than if it's just pee?
I don't know.
I personally think it's probably because it smells stronger.
It
Really?
could be.
Yeah.
All the pizza you had and the asparagus and all that stuff. He's like, whoa, what is that?
He
Get
ate
that
some
out of
raunch
here.
stuff last night.
This guy's back again. Wait, and here's the thing too. Without a real controlled, and I don't mean to anything that you're
Disprove, yeah.
saying, but without a controlled experiment to say this does this more than it does that, there are so many variables out there.
Right.
Even just the location of the scrape, it's a spot that he passes through first or more often or in a way.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard to say they do this more when I do this, or that there's a lot of variables there. So, and I'm not saying that I don't agree.
Here's a variable that I wonder about. What if the ground is clay versus a ground that would absorb it more?
Right.
Like, I think that could come into play in how frequently they come to it.
Oh, for sure. Well, here's
Right.
the thing, you can dig a nice pond, and if it's got a clay bottom, it'll hold water.
Yeah.
If it's porous and rocky, a lot of times it won't hold water. Like
Yeah.
that. It just disperses and leaves. So, I mean, there's the longevity of the scrape itself could very well be determined by the soil type.
Sure.
Absolutely. As far as their usage of it, there's just so many variables. It's just so hard to, like, people will make they have a theory, but it's based, I don't know how to say this, on limited information.
Well,
And
let me say this. I
not you, man. That's all right.
No,
That's all
but
right.
here's the thing. When it comes to scent, I have guys that come in and they're like, that is the best scent I've ever used.
Mhm.
And then 5 minutes later, some guy will walk in and he'll be like, that scent over there is complete garbage. I used it the other day and deer blew at me.
Right.
Exactly. That's what I mean. The variables.
Like, and
who knows
it might
why?
not have had anything to do with
That's correct.
Yeah, like,
Would the deer have done that anyway?
Jack might have been in his stand smoking,
Right.
and you just never know.
Well, you hear a lot of things. So guys be like, well, it doesn't hurt if you smoke in your deer stand. It chew tobacco and I spit right on the ground. That may be because the guys will say, well, I killed a big buck one time and I had to put my cigarette over here to shoot the Okay, I've heard that story a few times. Okay, so here's my thing. Does that make it a good tactic?
Yeah.
Just because it happened and you got away with it, does that make it a good tactic?
And I think that's why this whole discussion is important, because what do you do to prepare for success? Are you planning food plots? Are you setting up your equipment prior? Are you picking out stand locations that you feel are, good stand locations? And because of that, I really just want to encourage guys to make sure that you're preparing.
Yeah.
Like, make sure that come middle of September, you're not the guy.
Yeah.
You want to be the other
The
guy.
other guy. The other guys.
That's right. The other guy.
So here's a question for Jarrett. So Jarrett, you had a mix of events last deer season.
I did.
What are you going to do differently this year to try to make good on that big buck you're after?
Entry and exit. And I've even gone as far as I might buy a pair of hip waders just to wade the creek down to get to my stands from now on.
Thinking out of the box.
Because that's what it is. Because
Yeah.
if I go this way, it might be long, but he's still in the field and I'm in the field as well.
Yeah.
If I go the shortest way, he's still in the field and so am I.
Yeah.
I want
That's
to get
good.
away from him and get
Yeah.
in the creek is my thinking on that.
I think you're really onto a good idea there.
And now here's the thing. He beds on the creek. But my thinking is he's more apt to think I'm something else other than a human as I'm down in the creek, rather as I'm in the wide open field and he can say, oh,
Look at there. There's the guy.
That's the hunter I got to avoid, you know.
You may be absolutely right. And that anywhere I can, especially like a dry creek bottom that's maybe got a few puddles here or there, whatever, I love to use those for access.
Exactly, yes.
'Cause you're out of the line of sight of most animals. Yes, you could walk right up on a deer that's bedded in there, but a lot of times you can walk right past them as well, and they might not know you're even there. And I love to use those entry and exits, but you're thinking, what can I do so that my year next year doesn't end the same way it ended this year? That's the way you've always got to be thinking. How do I do this that it works? And sometimes there's not a definitive answer. You know, sometimes you just have to keep hunting, and it's just the way the hunting went.
Sometimes you're hunting for a good hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Or hunting for a good skill.
Yep.
And then on the back end, you kill a good deer.
Yep.
Well, at the end of every season, and truthfully at the end of every hunt, but at the end of every season, let's just say, I always want to be questioning, what can we do better next year? And I do that even from hunt to hunt. What can we do different on the very next sit?
You're not the average guy when it comes to stuff like that.
But it's the only way I know.
Like where Lathan is a minimalist, you are very methodical. I would say that about you.
I mean, I don't know that. I mean, I think you may be right. It's just the only way I know how. I just don't know how to do it any other way. And I can't stand, I don't know how to.
I think it's fascinating how personalities can even come out in hunting.
Sure.
Like Lathan's personality, that's who he is in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, what you see is what you get.
And with you, your personality, it's who you are in the woods.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, you are methodical to the point to where sometimes I'm like, dude, just come on, we got to do this.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's right. And I've had people say that very thing.
Yeah.
Dude, we have just got to hunt. Okay. Like, stop overthinking, stop worrying, stop overthinking. But for me, it's just the way I am. Like, I'm always thinking, I always, there's just something in me like, how do I don't like to lose.
Yeah.
I just don't like to lose. And I don't mind getting beat by the deer.
Did you tell your hair that?
Well,
that you don't like to lose?
Why? This always happens.
You got to get a haircut, dude.
Yeah. I guess when you do, you do.
Right? You do.
You know,
reverse fade, bald up top, hair on the sides. There you go, man.
Oh, man. I guess it's just how it is. You know what it is? It's all that thinking.
Probably.
Let's not get carried away. All right, guys.
I think it's about time to wrap this show up. So, we appreciate everybody tuning in. Yep. We also want to make sure that you guys like, share, comment. And here's what I'm going to do. We've been trying to boost our followers, not only on here on Facebook, but also on YouTube. If you guys wouldn't mind doing this for me, make sure you like this podcast, not just the page, but like this particular podcast. Share this particular podcast. Go on YouTube, follow, and if you do those three things, you guys will be entered in to get 6-shooter. I will give 6-shooter right here. This is a fall food plot mix. I'm going to give this away tomorrow, but I'm only going to give it away to people who have liked this page and liked this podcast, who have followed the page, because here's the deal. Last week, we asked a bunch of people to share it, and it told me that there were a bunch of shares, but I couldn't see those people that had shared it because they hadn't followed the page.
Oh, yeah.
So
there you go.
Do this. Make sure you follow the page. And then on top of that, make sure that you go to the YouTube channel and follow it. If you do those three things, you are in.
So we got sharing the podcast, following the page, and following on YouTube.
Like the podcast. Yep. Let's add share. We're going to do that. 4 things. Four things. You got to do 4 things. So you got to like the podcast. You got to share the podcast. You got to follow the page and go to YouTube and follow on there. If you do those 4 things, I'm going to check And tomorrow at noon, I'm going to give away a 6-shooter. So this is an interesting seed blend. It is made up of 7 top turnip, not 6, but 7. Because that's 6. That's sucky stuff.
Yeah, you don't want that.
We want the good stuff. So also looks like Viva turnip. Long live the Viva turnip.
Yeah.
And rutabaga. Apparently the deer love rutabaga. Ethiopian cabbage. This is a unique blend right here.
Who discovered that?
Giant Swiss chard and the Titan rape.
The Titan rape.
That's right. Not the little old rape.
No,
the Titan.
the Titan one. The Andre the Giant.
So this 6-shooter, it provides you with a lot of tonnage, and we're going to give it away tomorrow at noon. So make sure you like, comment, share, follow, do all the things that we're supposed to do, you're supposed to do, and we will meet back up with you tomorrow at noon. So we appreciate you tuning in, and this has been Up for Discussion. Bye-bye.
Bye.